Okay, welcome to part 3 of this section where I am doing a bunch of videos on more of the implementation side of things I really wish I knew that I would have liked to have known as when I was first getting into a project. So let's get started. So my third question is more about what's missing from Revit. Now, when I certainly myself, you sort of have this preconception that everything is in Revit because everyone discusses it, saying it's the best thing since sliced bread. Well, what you sort of tend to forget is what is lacking, and some of them can be quite fundamental to your day-to-day using of the software. So a couple of things I just wanted to go over, just as before, if you sort of jumped on this from onto this video and not seen the whole playlist. So I'm making a bunch of videos just to do with the implementation side of it, basically coming from AutoCAD or whatever software you used before. I'm a freelance architectural technologist. Those are my details there if you want to get in touch with me and discuss anything. As before, I'm a freelancer. Got in an intro in 2013 with Revit, and then started using Revit on my projects in 2017, and mainly on bespoke housing projects. And this is where a lot you learn a lot in Revit when you're doing bespoke housing, because everything changes on every project, so you come across something new on every project. I certainly do, even till now. Okay, so what's missing now? Fundamentally, if you are using Revit for building regulations drawings and not necessarily for a BIM project where you will be passing models, so you are basically doing the set of working drawings in Revit now, so still in 2D to a certain extent, and rather than using something like AutoCAD or Vectorworks or something like that. So I think when it came to it, I think there were three things that I really had an issue with to start with. So I've just made a small section here of what I found an issue with, and that was the first thing I would say, and probably the main thing, is that the content library that ships with Revit is about 50% complete from what you would need to really do your first project. Now, why do I say that? It's purely once you do in plan view, and if you're doing something to even a planning stage, I've just changed this to course view. Everything looks pretty good there for a 1 to 50 or a 1 to 100 drawing for planning, no problems. But once it comes to a 3D view and you may need to change this to another window, the content library that ships with Revit is not good at all, especially for stuff based in the UK. Now, this will become relevant on every project you do. So whether you're getting this from Autodesk Direct or you're getting it from one of the resellers, I think one thing to just note is that the content library, which ships with Revit families instead of blocks, is about as incomplete as it is for AutoCAD. So you literally, they will say to you, load a family up here, and you go, oh, all of these windows here, oh, that looks great. But when you actually start looking up at this view here, as you start flicking through them, you think, oh yeah, there's quite a few there. Yeah, I must admit that I've only used about 25% of these compared to what you would need on a day-to-day project. So that is just one thing to be aware of. Metric library here. You will see there's a bunch of other stuff. Casework, which is sort of units and worktops, those sorts of things, furniture. When you'll see all of this and you think, oh, it looks really good, really complete, but it really is not. Now, as I go through the course, I will just, say to you that, this looks all really good and looks really complete, but it really, really is not. And I will highlight this as we go through a project, once this sort of implementation series of videos are complete. But that is just one thing to be aware of. Once you've learned how to actually do a simple project in Revit, the next step you want to start looking at is Revit families. But that's for another project, that's for another time. But so let's just explore more of what I've got here that I came across as an issue to start with, once I'd actually finished the basics and I wanted to do a building regulations project. Now in the UK, I tend to, with my working drawings, is that I would either do a dash or a double dash with a dot, for depending on drainage runs. Yes, because I'm using Revit LT and this set of projects is everything will be done in Revit LT, so you have to sort of find workarounds. You could do drainage runs if you like, using components, but really I wouldn't do that because the size of your actual file at the end will just be horrifically big. I mean, I do projects at the moment which are for 3 to 4 bedroom houses, and these are very basic standard building regulation projects, with a limited amount of families in, and I'm always ending up around about the 50 megabyte per file. So that's just something to be aware of, is your file sizes are going to get much bigger. But back to what I just wanted to show you here is that if you do have to draw a line, because you can draw lines in Revit, something I was a little bit worried about. You can go up to the annotate view here and do a detailed line, and then it sends you into this second set of commands here, and in the line style here you can see I've got some loaded here that I have got from elsewhere. So I think one of the first things I worried with is that, okay, you've got different thicknesses of lines and you've got overhead, which is this one here, but then that's all Revit ships with. So then the first thing you like to do is, I want to have a double dash and a dot, just changing this to thin lines, or a long dash and a dot, or a short, or however you want to explain that. And Revit does not ship with all these line styles. So just wanted to let you know, it's just as if you were using AutoCAD. You would still have to load these, but the process is much more complex than it is in AutoCAD. So that's just something to be aware of. So those are the sort of things that I just wanted to sort of cover. The other thing is hatch styles. That is a little bit more straightforward in Revit, getting hatch styles loaded in. So with hatch styles, you tend to go up to field region and then go into edit. I'm just bringing this across just so you can see, and then you've got a fill pattern. If you click on here, you will get a certain amount of fill patterns. But again, very basic. I recently did a project where I needed a dry stack ledge stone. Obviously that's not included. You can use the hatch patterns from AutoCAD. So if you do already have a library of those, you can still use them, but you have to go into the actual hatch file and add some coding, which I will go into in the project that we do, to actually be able to load it into Revit and then either use it within the drafting or the model view, because those again have different ways that you should use them. Like with Revit, nothing's ever simple, so you have to then, if you want to use say the ledge stone in one view, then you have to use a drafting view instead of a model view, because if you do it into isometric it won't view correctly. So there's all these sort of things that you'll get aware of as we go through the course. So yes, so if you wanted, so that is a little bit more straightforward, but I just wanted to let you know the line styles and the content library that ships with Revit is not good at all. So once you sort of install Revit, and you've started using it, you will come up across this time and time again, where you would either need to try and find a Revit family or build one yourself. So can you edit the content library? Yes, you can. The only problem is because once you start editing something from the library, certain things, as you go into, without going into too much detail, all the libraries are pretty much parametric, so if you change the dimension, everything moves with it. Well, if you try and edit the library and you don't know, and you wasn't the original creator of that family, what I have found is if you try and delete something to make something bigger, one thing is connected to another thing and the whole thing collapses. So one of the things that I will say is that the content library that you build over the time it's always good to build your own content library so you know what's connected to what. Revit families is a whole world into itself, but so that will get explained a little bit later down the line. But I just wanted to let you know, just to wrap up, if you are starting your first building regulations project and it is very simple, then the only thing that I'd say was missing was possibly a window style. So if you wanted to have a window with 4 panes, with mullions in between, then that is not in the content library. Or if you wanted a window with 4 panes with transoms with 2 top opening lights, that's not in the content library, so you've either got to try and search it. Yes, a lot more manufacturers are coming online with these sorts of things, but from my experience, the one window that you need is not in there. And again, with hatch patterns, that's just one thing that you should be aware of. And line styles, because I tend to use these line styles for drainage runs or pipe runs to indicate plumbing, and you want to have a different line style than what Revit ships with, which would just be medium lines, path travel lines, thin lines, and overhead. You've got demolished if you want to use that, but I wouldn't. So just one thing, as you can see up on my toolbar here, I did a little quick search, to be totally honest, to see if someone had already done these things, because you've got to obviously weigh this up between how long it would take you to build all these compared to what someone might have already done it. So one of the ones, if you don't want to go down the route of building these or drawing these all up yourselves, Arcs Graphics are a really good source of detail items more than families. I don't have any sort of allegiance with them or sort of affiliation with them. I don't get any kickbacks or anything like that. But what they do is they've done all these lines for you. So it is just a simple case of just clicking on it and copying and pasting it into your file, and it's in there. These are not expensive. It's certainly not as expensive as it would be to actually build them yourselves. So Art Graphics, I'll put a link in the description to their website, and you can have a look at all the stuff that they've done. I do use them for the majority of the Revit families. So that they also do a colour system, which again, if you just wanted to do a quick copy and paste, like I said, these are just made up of a solid and a colour, so those are pretty straightforward to actually do in Revit yourselves. So just to wrap up, the 2 main things that you will come across with on your first building regulations project in terms of a graphic side of things is your Revit families and your line styles. Okay, hopefully that's everything that I certainly came across. If you liked the video, just give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. If you can, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell. I'm trying to do one once a week of these implementation videos, and then later down the line I am going to go for a full Revit project unhindered. You will see exactly the error messages that I come up with and how to resolve them, and then that will hopefully give you a bit more of an understanding of actually what it's like using Revit. Okay, that's everything. Many thanks. Bye bye.